Yonah Jeremy Bob, the Jerusalem Post's military correspondent. Thanks so much for being here with us today.
Glad to be here.
Give us the breakdown. Where are we at with the war in Gaza?
Yeah, so basically at this point, we're now in every sector of Gaza. You have northern Gaza, you have central Gaza, Khan Yunis, which I call sort of like mid-southern Gaza, and Rafah, which is like deep southern Gaza. And that's different from the earlier stages of the war where we'd sort of do a big invasion in the north, pull out, big invasion in the south, pull out. We're in all of the areas at once.
Wow.
We've taken over something like 30% of the area of Gaza, and we're basically slowly pushing the population centers into what we call the Al-Mawasi humanitarian area. There are still parts of the Palestinian population that aren't there yet, but that's basically the strategy. And the hope that the IDF and the government has is that the more they do this, but they're doing it slowly, there still could be a hostage deal. They could still avoid what they call like the massive invasion, which would be, you know, harder fighting and maybe more casualties on the Palestinian side, maybe also more casualties on our side. You'll notice that we haven't had any casualties in a month almost like of an invasion. So all of this, even though it's expanded a lot, is still sort of a gradual invasion, and it still could get a lot more intense.
One of the incidents that kind of caught public attention a ton this weekend or over the past few weeks and came to a head again this weekend is an incident in which multiple members of the Red Crescent were killed by the IDF. Can you give us the background on that and kind of tell us about the new developments over the weekend?
Yeah, so this was a huge mistake. The IDF has admitted it was a mistake. 14 members of the Red Cross were killed. One was seriously wounded. And it's a mistake on multiple levels. First of all, killed not just, you know, any innocent people, but like international aid workers who are like risking their lives to save people, and they don't want to do that. Israel doesn't want to do that. The context was that at 4:30 in the morning on March 23rd, they set an ambush for a group of Hamas people, and they did ambush them, and that was considered like a very successful operation. Then afterwards, there were other ambulances and other people who came through who they didn't attack. It's not like they were attacking anything that walked or moved or drove, but at 6 a.m., they had indications. This is a tricky piece. They haven't really told us what the indications were, that this was a Hamas convoy. Now, if you move backwards, you could be like, how could it be a Hamas convoy? The ambulances, Hamas has systematically used ambulances. So that's not like a question, it's a fact. Not one or two times, many times. They've arrested people in ambulances. It's documented. Then there's a debate about, did they have their lights on? Did they not have their lights on? If they have their lights on, that's sort of like a sign that they're good because you know, actual aid workers, because, you know, if they're Hamas, they're sort of trying to sneak around, have their lights off. So they're, you know, originally they said the lights were off. Video footage came out that the lights were on. Maybe they say that the first, you know, there was, I think, 4 ambulances. The first one, maybe the lights were off. We'll see. There's going to be a longer investigation. But so number one, they shouldn't have been killed, but they thought that they were Hamas. And number two, there's a dispute about the signs of why they thought they were Hamas. And then there's a dispute about how the bodies were handled afterwards, because they took a look at the bodies. And again, they haven't told us what, but they said there were signs on them that at least 6 of them were members of Hamas. And so at first they didn't report it at all. And then at some point they figured out, oh, shoot, you know, these are aid workers. And so they said what the procedure is to basically put them in a netting, because they weren't staying there. This was not like a area where the IDF has taken control of. They were like doing an ambush and running out. And since they're running out, they still don't want the bodies to get lost. So they put them in a netting and they sent the coordinates to the UN. And the UN is then supposed to be able to pick them up. And the UN couldn't find them. Not exactly clear on why not. And then the IDF at some point came back and was doing another operation. There's like the bodies could get harmed during, you know, a gunfight, so they buried them, and then the UN came back again, couldn't find them again. Eventually, they brought them out again. The UN found them, and that's why there's this huge delay from March 23rd, and that's why there were, you know, allegations that they were like killed execution style because of how they found them. But again, you know, how many instances has the IDF, you know, killed aid workers, put them in net, and the UN found them? We still need also some answers to that. So there's we got some answers, but a lot of the answers brought a lot of new questions, and hopefully in the coming days and weeks we'll know more.
Tell us a little bit how this ties into kind of broader international law and kind of critiques or support for Israel's conduct of the war as a whole, including International Criminal Court and allegations of war crimes.
Right. So we have the International Criminal Court is already investigating Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. They might, we hope not, but they might at some point also investigate Israeli soldiers and Israeli generals. So far they haven't. Doesn't mean that they won't. And so this is a bad incident for us because we're trying to convince them that they should drop the investigation that they've already opened and not indict, Netanyahu and Gallant, and that they also shouldn't open new investigations. And so when you have an incident like this, it makes it look like, we're not as good as we say we are. I will say in our defense that if you look at other wars, that our ratio of, combatants or terrorists that we have killed compared to civilians is actually a better ratio than a lot of other countries have done in war. And when you add into that the fact that Hamas has done systematic use of human shields, not like once or twice, but all over the place, it's almost impossible to fight in that kind of environment, even if you ask the civilians to leave. Sometimes Hamas doesn't let the civilians leave. You have to get at the bad guys, so to speak. So it's almost impossible not for civilians to be caught in the crossfire. Now, this is a particularly bad incident because, they're aid workers and they were marked. There was an incident similar to this about a year ago with the World Central Kitchen. And after that, Israel put out, I thought, it was a remarkable investigation. Top officials got fired. Top officials got censored. So I think it would be appropriate if they do something like that again. There should be serious consequences. And if there are serious consequences for this screw up, then we can sort of, reclaim legitimacy and say, you can trust us that we say we didn't hit these, people on purpose, because when we do make a mistake, we admit to it.
Yonah, thank you so much.
My pleasure.